It's Kyiv, not Kiev on the line. We are Polina Bachuk and Tetiana Hajduk.
It's been 2 months already since Ukraine defends itself from an unprovoked large-scale Russian aggression of the war that Russia started 8 years ago.
In today's episode, you'll see Russia dancing on the remains of Mariupol,
Deportation of Ukrainians as another proof of Russian genocide.
What's wrong with Germany's support and why Chancellor Sholtz is not equal to all Germans?
What is crypto fund of Ukraine and how to donate to Ukrainian army in crypto?
After Srebrenica, humanity swore that it would never happen again. Today, Ukraine has a second Srebrenica, and this is Bucha. Survivors of Srebrenica asked, do not allow the same to happen in Aleppo. Still it happened. And now we have the second Aleppo, and this is Mariupol.
According to Ukrainian officials, an estimated 100,000 people remain trapped in Mariupol under constant bombardment since Russian forces surrounded the city on March 1st. More than 20,000 people have died during the assault. Currently, Mariupol is 95% destroyed.
During the months of the siege, the Russians did not allow the opening of green corridors. Every time the evacuation route was agreed upon, the Russians fired in its direction.
They set an ultimatum for humanitarian corridors, the complete surrender of Mariupol. The Azov regiment refused to capitulate and promised to fight to the last bullet. We told you about the Azov regiment in our previous episode, by the way, link in the comments below.
The overwhelming forces of the enemy pushed the Azov fighters to the Azovstal plant. Together with them, more than 1,000 residents of Mariupol, mostly women, children, and the elderly, found shelter in the underground premises of the plant.
Ukrainian fighters have so exhausted the enemy with their deliberate strikes that Putin himself has ordered to end the assault on Azovstal. Now the Russians have laid siege to the plant and its surroundings.
The Azov fighters share provisions with the civilians who have not seen the site for a month already. Every morning, children wake up in the catacombs to the sounds of bombings and do not understand how the world can watch them being killed without doing anything.
Soldiers of the Azov regiment showed a video of how civilians of Mariupol live in the basements of the Azovstal plant. In the video, people say that the Russian occupiers, who allegedly came to save them from the Nazis, actually saved Mariupol from peaceful life in a beautiful city.
Recently, US satellite firm Maxar published footage of a mass burial site with about 200 graves near Mariupol. The company said that these images showed the graves aligned in 4 sections of linear rows, each about 280 feet long. Ukrainian officials say a mass grave could contain as many as 9,000 bodies.
Russia's leadership has ordered its troops to remove any evidence of crimes committed by the Russian army in Ukraine, and now they are using 13 mobile crematoria to burn civilian bodies.
Until now, Russia denied every proposal for humanitarian corridors. The United Nations, the European Union, Turkey, and other countries have demanded that Russia opened green corridors, but it still did not work.
It is impossible to reach an agreement with Russia, but it is possible to inflict a crushing defeat on it, to make it really hurt.
We call on the world to put more effective pressure and sanctions on Russia. Supplying Ukraine with heavy weapons is also a very big part of the solution. I would say a very crucial one.
If nothing is done to help the besieged Mariupol, the entire world will bear responsibility.
According to Ukraine's Ministry of Internal Affairs, 3.6 million Ukrainians fled the country to save their lives during the war's first 2 months. Over 1 million of people, or 1/3 of the total, have already come back home.
Russian aggression was justified by the claim that it had to come to save Ukrainians. It's still not clear what from. But how can you explain why, for example, Kharkiv residents drove over 1,000 kilometers to the western border in a tough road trip that lasted several days, but did not go to Russia, which is only 40 kilometers away?
However, if we look at the countries in which Ukrainians found themselves fleeing the war, Russia comes in second behind Poland. Why? Everything is very simple. Russia forcibly deports Ukrainians.
Lyudmila Denisova, the head of the Ombudsman's office, cites worrisome statistics. More than 600,000 Ukrainians have already entered the Russian Federation, with more than 117,000 of them being children.
Mariupol Mayor Vadim Boychenko has repeatedly reported that people are being forcibly removed from the city under the cover of evacuation. Imagine spending the worst weeks of your life starving and thirsty in the basement. You buried your loved ones, your home is destroyed, and out of a sudden you are told that you can evacuate from the city.
You gather the kids and go under fire, risking your life, to the location where the evacuation will take place. You board the bus and stare out of the window for a long time, hoping to see the Ukrainian flag at the checkpoint. However, on the way, you discover that you are being taken to Russia.
People who have destroyed your home and killed your loved ones are transporting you to a country where the residents want you dead.
Exactly. And before they are deported, people are sent to the so-called filtration camps. According to people who managed to reach the Ukrainian government-controlled territory, the filtration camp is in fact a long line of buses and cars.
The Russian occupants are questioning everyone to discover if they have family in Ukraine, what they think of Russia, etc. People are beaten, stripped naked, and checked for patriotic tattoos. If there is even the slightest suggestion that a person is overly sympathetic to Ukraine, he or she will be executed.
People who are lucky enough to pass the test and stay alive have their documents and phones seized. They are transported to Taganrog, Saransk, and other Russian cities. Communication with them is lost.
Ukrainian investigative journalists from the project Info found that the Russian Orthodox Church plays a crucial part in the deportation and resettlement of Ukrainians.
Russia's Ministry of Emergency Situations is passing on information about the deportees to the clergy, and they are already centrally resettling them in churches and monasteries, conducting interviews with deported people, and, by the way, installing surveillance cameras to watch them.
Journalists learned about this from churchmen's emails, which were shared with them by the anonymous hackers.
Deportation by force shows signs of genocide. So does the forcible transportation of children to the area that had started the armed conflict. The case of Ukrainians being deported to Russia is being investigated by Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office, and it should be brought before international tribunals as a violation of the Geneva Convention. Despite official Berlin's repeated assurances to help Ukraine with the heavy weapons needed to deter Russia, arms supplies have been delayed. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has many reasons why. Ukrainians may not be able to control it, weapons are not ready for use, they cannot be delivered because there is a threat of Russian aggression against NATO.
According to Bild, the German Ministry of Defense, at the request of Scholz's office, removed all heavy weapons from the list Ukraine sent.
The list has shrunk to 24 pages out of 48, and it has no Leopard or Marder tanks, no multiple rocket launchers and anti-ship missiles, no Milan and Spike anti-tank missiles. The total cost of German weapons for Ukraine is only 307 million euros. Although the German government has announced the allocation of 1 billion euros.
Scholz believes that the rules of war no longer exist. They change on the fly. Therefore, in his opinion, arms supplies to Ukraine could make Germany a participant in the war against Russia.
Opinion was fueled by an open letter from German intellectuals to the Chancellor asking him not to supply weapons to Ukraine, as these allegedly continued the war and postponed diplomatic decisions. By the way, this letter arouses my in-disguised disgust, because no one wants to hear the stench of Russian money from people with a reputation in Germany, journalists, writers, and lawyers, but they stink.
Scholz's approval ratings in Germany are falling as a result of such statements. If the German opposition initiates a resolution, he faces resigning. Even members of the coalition parties are becoming increasingly dissatisfied with the Chancellor's strategy.
In addition to blocking arms supplies, Scholz is blocking an immediate energy embargo against Russia. It is a shame that it's not the pictures from Ukraine or the loud appeals of the German people that should push him to the right decision, but the appeal of 50 members of the European Parliament, which appeared earlier this week.
The EU continues to pay about 800 million euros a day into Putin's pocket, helping to fund his military machine. EU member states, including Germany, have the necessary infrastructure to supply oil by sea, and 30 OPEC members can easily meet demand with little effect on prices.
The consequences for the German economy, according to MEPs, will be significant but manageable. However, the EU's united decision will cost Russia 30 or up to 40% of its GDP. This will be a key component in convincing Putin to end the war.
There is another bitter circumstance that adds to the German behavior towards Ukraine. According to the Telegraph, Germany has armed Russia for 121 million euros since 2014, circumventing sanctions and extending previously concluded contracts. Russia now kills Ukrainians with bombs, rockets, and cannons made in Germany.
Do you know how the government explained that? That they were fooled by Russian buyers who claimed the peaceful use of goods, peaceful use of weapons. Doesn't it seem fair for Ukraine to be able to defend itself against German weapons with German weapons?
Fortunately, Scholz is not the whole of Germany. According to a YouGov poll, almost 1 in 3 of Germans wants to help the people of Ukraine through the war or has already done so. According to ARD Deutschland Trend, roughly 60% of people support Ukraine's EU membership. So thank you very much, our German friends.
Cryptocurrencies have become a powerful tool for attracting additional funding to support the armed forces of Ukraine. Crypto enthusiasts from all over the world quickly organized fundraising initiatives, first for the army and then for humanitarian missions.
The cryptocurrency market officially started operating in Ukraine in mid-March. President Zelensky signed the relevant law. The industry, which last year reached a capitalization of $3 trillion, will be actively developing in Ukraine.
At the start of the crypto market, the official website for crypto donations, Aid for Ukraine, has been launched as well. Thanks to the portal, funds are being raised for cyber defense, information counteraction to Russian propaganda, and technical assistance to the armed forces.
Everything works very simply. You choose the amount in the selected cryptocurrencies, connect a wallet, and confirm the transaction. The Crypto Fund of Ukraine has raised already more than $60 million.
The Ministry of Finance reported that they have already purchased bulletproof vests, thermal imaging optics, medical supplies, dry rations, helmets, and walkie-talkies at the expense of the crypto fund.
Aid for Ukraine also helped purchase 1,000 Borislav 1 external bone fixation devices. Such a medical device helps to save thousands of our wounded soldiers.
People from all over the world can donate in cryptocurrency. Suppose you are also a crypto enthusiast and want to help Ukraine win the war we didn't start. In that case, we will leave a link to the official crypto wallets of the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. You can find more information on the ministry's official website.
And finally, last Sunday, Ukraine celebrated Easter. As Ukrainian soldiers continue to perform their combat missions, Ukrainians were able to go to church to sanctify the traditional Easter bread, called Pascha, and Easter eggs, which we call pisanki and krashanki.
It is encouraging that an increasing number of Ukrainian believers are rejecting the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine in favor of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
The Russian Church is an integral part of the Russian state and the main provider of ideology for the Russian world. The enemy organization has no place in Ukraine.
The fire of grace descended on Jerusalem. Fire also broke out in the Russian city of Bryansk, where an oil depot and a military facility were set on fire by God's wrath.
Russian invaders, God sees everything. Christ is risen, which means that the afterlife exists.
Pray, Russian invaders, because Judgment Day awaits you both on earth and in heaven.
Thank you very much for staying with us today. These were Polina Bachuk and Tetiana Haiduk. Kyiv, not Kiev.
Stay safe, stay kind, and stand with Ukraine.